Hey everyone, today I'm going to go through creating custom meshes or editing the current clothing for a session. So there's a few things you're going to need to start off. You're going to need Blender, most recent version, with everything that's 2.8 and higher. You're going to also need Unreal Engine. Make sure you have version 4.22.3. Don't use anything higher and definitely don't use anything lower. And the third thing you'll need is uModel. You can get uModel just by Googling it, and you'll get this website, which is where it officially comes from. You get your Windows 32 version. And also for Blender, you're going to need a specific plugin. It is the PSK/PSA plugin. Again, just quick Google for Blender Import PSK, and you'll get this GitHub. So you'll just click download zip, and also on this page there's instructions on how to install it. Make sure you're using the 2.80 version for your 2.80 Blender. Now that we have those out of the way, we can open up uModel. Give it a little bit to open. Make sure for the path you select your session game folder within Steam. It should load up pretty quick because it's reading from the pack. And you will get the encryption key message. For the last few versions, this encryption key has been the same. So you can just copy it down, save it somewhere on your computer, text file, whatever. And when you load up, make sure you're pointing to this game folder. There's a engine folder, you'll ignore that, plugins, and session game. Session game is the unpacked content, so this is where all of your mods will actually go. So if you've ever installed maps or clothing like shirts, decks, shoes, whatever, those will all end up in here. So for just a quick example, let's take a look at these shoes. When you open up an asset, make sure you select 4.22. And there you go. Those are the color for, or the texture for the Adidas shoes that I've released. Yeah. So, to get the actual default meshes, you'll need to go back to your game folder, customization, character. AFXX is the female character, AMXX is the male character. You'll see the body base, which is pretty much the naked set of meshes and materials. So if you have stuff like skin colors or tattoos, those usually end up in here replacing these. Feet, head, lower body, and upper body, that's for all the clothing itself. And every single one of these folders will have a materials, a skeletal meshes, and a textures folder. And all three of those are needed to be able to work in the game. So for this example, let's just go and grab a hat. We'll take the one without hair. You can hit, well, let's just open it up and see what it looks like. So this is the bald model with the normal hat. And in here, when you're looking at a skeletal mesh, you can actually hit page up and page down to cycle through all the materials and textures that are associated with this. And I'll actually come back to that later when we're looking at Unreal and trying to match up the textures and the materials. So you'll be able to see their path, what kind of class they are, and their name. And the naming is really important, and we'll come back to that later. So I'll go back to the mesh, I'll just go back to the File Explorer. We'll hit Export. Make sure you have a path set, and make sure your mesh is using PSK. And texture format, I suggest TGA. You can just hit OK, it'll export. Depending on what you're exporting, it might take a while. And I also suggest that if you're going to heavily get into the content modification, just export this entire game folder or the customization folder, and you can do that by right-clicking export folder contents and save it to a specific folder. I've already done that as part of this full content for the uModel. That way, anytime I need to grab a texture or a mesh, everything is already there. All the textures, all the materials, all the naming, all the meshes. That way I don't have to go and open uModel every single time, only if I need it. So now that we've exported that mesh, we can go to the export folder. We'll drill down to find that mesh itself. It'll be under head, scale meshes. Here's the PSK. So we'll just move that to the desktop for now. And at this point, we can open up Blender. So when you open up Blender, you're just going to start with a generic file. I typically just delete these, the cube, the light, and the camera. And once you have the PSK plugin installed, under the file import, you'll get this selection to import a PSK or a PSA. We're going to do PSK. We're going to go to our desktop, find that hat, import. Once it's imported, you're going to need to probably zoom out. Awesome. So right away you'll notice that the mesh itself is pointing a different direction than the skeleton. So you'll need to take either the mesh or the skeleton itself and rotate it. So I'll just quickly, I don't want to rotate both, I just want this. Alright, I'll rotate the head. So you can do a rotate, just look up in this top left corner to see the position of the rotation. If you hold control, you can get it to snap every 5 degrees. So you want it to set it to 180. And then I'm actually going to rotate the whole thing back 180, because I wasn't able to rotate just the skeleton. Actually, I think... Yeah, so if you select just the skeleton, you're able to rotate that independently of the head. But either way, as long as they're both facing the right way, you should be good. If you do get into Unreal and the whole model's backwards, this is the case. You just need to simply rotate the whole of it 180 degrees the other way. So we're just going to actually go to object mode, select the hat. Oh, actually, before we do that, you're going to need to change your units to metric, and instead of 1.0, you're going to want to do 0.01, and you'll see the grid update as well. The second thing you want to do is rename the collection here. We're going to name it Armature. Otherwise, Unreal won't know where to start the skeleton. It'll start adding additional sockets, and then either your game will crash or the skeleton will look really weird, and it just won't work. So make sure you have that set. Make sure you have the units set. The units, if you don't set that, your model will show up really, really big in the game and in Unreal, and things won't work. So now at this point, we can go to the head model. You're going to do whatever you need to do with your edits. And actually, for this example, all I'm going to really do, let's see if I can select just the hat. Unselect all, we'll take the hat. And I'm going to rotate it sideways, 90 degrees. It won't look right, obviously, because you would have to do some additional modding. let's see. Of course, it's going to look really weird right now. I'm doing this really quick. I know that's not the point of this tutorial, but I just want to give you guys an example that we can have fun with. So it's looking pretty good. I'm sure there's other touch-ups that we could do later. If you are editing the current vertices and faces, you're going to want to make sure that all of the UVs are still how they are. That way they can use the default textures that the session devs have included as part of the game. Otherwise, you'll have to remap things and make your own custom textures and your own UV map, and that can get a little extensive if you're just simply trying to do this where you're rotating something or making something bigger. But again, as soon as you start adding custom vertices and faces, you'll have to UV map it in order to get textures to show up properly. Otherwise, you're going to have some problems. So here's everything. This includes the face texture, the hat, and you can actually select each section to make sure they are getting UV mapped properly still. So there's the face, here's the hat, and here's the eyelashes, and we can cover those later once we're importing materials into Unreal. So once you're done doing mesh edits, you're going to need to make sure that your weights are properly set. And actually for the head, it looks like there's only one weight, and it's part of the AMXX head. So if you make a custom hat, make sure you go in, you add AMXX for the vertex groups, and you weight it all to 1. Red is 1, 0 is blue, and anything in between you'll see is yellow, green, orange. So if for some reason you add a new mesh and let's say it shows up all blue, you're going to have a problem, because once you go to put it in the game and the animations start moving around, it's just going to start floating, or you're going to have some weird issues like this. If we move the whole torso, yeah, you don't want this to happen. So always make sure that your weights are properly set. I recommend changing weights if you're trying to get things in between. Set your weight to 0.5. I'll change it back to add. And then you can paint in layer by layer. You can also do strength 0.5. That way you can get more fine control of your colors. But you can also do select by vertex, select all, weight, set weight, and it will set whatever your weight is currently set at. So if you want absolutely everything, you would set this to 1, select all, weight, set weight 1, and it's done for you. So at this point, if we go back to that pose, we'll move the whole body, and everything should move with it. And that's exactly what we want. So that's how it will react in-game. So at this point, there's only one thing left to do, and that is to collapse your trees take your model, hold shift, select your skeleton. We'll actually go back to layout, sorry. Go to file, go to export. You're going to export as an FBX. We'll put this on my desktop. We'll call it demo hat. And down here, you're going to want to pay attention to the export FBX options. There's a few different tabs that we have set here, and you can see some of the defaults are checked. There is a specific preset that I have saved for session exporting. So if you follow these, you can easily just hit plus, and then you can save your own preset. We're going to want to make sure selected objects are on. The rest is default. Geometry, these first two checkboxes. Armature, by default, add leaf bones is selected, and this is not selected. You want to flip that around. And then animation, I don't think you'll need to worry about that unless you're messing with PSAs, which we're not right now. But in any case, you want these two options off. And at this point, we're sending it to the desktop. We can just hit export. And we can minimize. Here's our FBX. So at this point, we can go to Unreal. You're going to create a new blank project with no starter content. We'll just name this demo hat. Make sure you pay attention to the path folder because we'll be coming back to that later. That's where all your cooked files will go. Also, here's your project name and the Unreal version that you're using. Make sure it's 4.22.3 like I said before. So once Unreal opens, we'll go over to this left side. We'll expand this tree content. And there's actually some additional files that you're going to need. You're going to need the skeletons and the folder structure. So if I go back to the desktop here, I have a folder skeletal or session skeletons, and we'll just take that. It has the art folders, customization folders, skeletons. We'll just copy that content. We'll go to our Unreal project, and again, make sure you know where that path is. Go to our project, and we'll paste it at the same level as that content folder, and it's all there. So if we go back to Unreal, that left side should populate and have everything that was in there. So here's the male skeleton, the female skeleton, as well as the customization for the female and the male. There's no actual files in here. It's just the folder structure, so you don't have to create them yourself. For skateboards, I don't have that in here. This is just for the clothing and the base model, so you'll need to create your own folders and with the proper structure for the skateboards, the deck graphics, trucks, wheels, whatever. So we'll go into AMXX, scale meshes, and we'll go back to our FBX. We'll drag that in, and you'll get the FBX Import options. And from here, you'll select the skeleton, the male skeleton, hit this drop down, turn off Create Physics Asset. Everything else can be left as default. We'll hit Import. And you might get an error message here. It's just a warning saying there's no smoothing groups in the FBX. That's fine. As long as you don't have any big blaring errors, this should be good. If you do, then there was an issue with either the skeleton or the mesh that you exported as part of the FBX. So now you'll get the mesh and all of the materials that are associated with it. These materials are the same ones that are labeled in the Blender. I already closed the Blender file, otherwise I'd show you that. So these we're going to have to take and make sure they are in the proper folder structure in order for this mesh to reference those files and use the normal ones in the game. We won't be actually using these as part of our cook. Well, actually we are, but we're not using them as part of the package that we're putting up on the asset store or into our local game files. If you are creating custom geometry and you have custom UV maps and custom materials and textures, you can put those wherever you want, but you'll have to reference them still on the mesh, and you'll have to include them when you package up the files to upload to the asset store. But I won't be covering that. I'll just be focused on using the default materials and textures. So the easiest thing we can do is go back to our uModel, find that hat again, open it up, and this is where we're going to use page up and page down. So we'll first go to this eye. I'm going to move this over. Let me clean some things up here. So we're using this eye first. And there's a thing to note for the class. There's a material instance as well as a material. We need to pay attention to that as well. So first we'll be looking at the MI Twin Blast Eye Blend. So we'll go and find that. And it's using a material instance. So if we hover over this, you can see it's using a material. We'll have to right click, create material instance. We'll take the name of the original and delete the original. Rename the material instance. And then finally we will take that into the proper folder, which is Art, Master Materials, Character Shaders, Skin Shaders, Skin Materials. So we'll go back to that material. We'll take it and we'll drop it in, move here. Second is the MI Occlusion instance. Again, this is another material instance, and ours is a normal material. Create the instance for it, copy the first name, delete it, rename the new material instance that we created, and that will go into the same folder, Skin Shader, Skin Materials. So we'll drop that in, Skin Shader, Skin Materials, move here. Okay, next is MATI Refractive. This is just a normal material, so the one that we have should be fine. We have to put it into Skin Shader's Global Eyes. Skin Shader Global Eyes material. So we'll take the eye refractive, put it in there. Then we'll move on to the material instance for the head skin. So again, we'll create material instance, copy the original name, delete the original, rename the instance, and then this will be going into customization, so make sure you're paying attention to that. This doesn't go into the art, this goes into customization. So we won't be needing that art anymore. Customization, character, male, body base, materials. So we'll take that, put it into materials, move here. Then we have our material for the hat. That also goes into customization. So it goes to AMXX head materials. So AMXX head materials, it's right here. Move that there. And last but not least, we have the hair. So this is also material. AMXX body base materials. So AMXX body base materials, move here. So with that being done, we can expand this up again, open up our hat mesh, and you'll see that a few of the textures are now missing. That's because we deleted them and created material instances for them. So you just need to make sure that all these are pointing to the proper material, because that material is in the proper folder structure. So we'll take a look at iBlend. iBlend, just pick it. Occlusion, just pick that. Eye refractive is fine. MAI head. MAI head. Here's the cap. Here's the hair. So at this point, you can hit save. Also make sure you click on your skeleton here. You should have AMXX master as the very first socket or skeleton If you don't, then there was another problem with your skeleton mesh that you exported as part of the FBX. So this needs to all be the same. That way, whenever something happens with the character animation, it moves with it just as you would expect. So we can close that. And the last thing we need to do is rename the mesh itself. The easiest thing that you can do is go to your export, find that same file we exported, and just copy the name. So at this point, everything is ready to go. Also, as a note, you should be able to drag the mesh into your game scene, and it should appear this size. If it's not, if it's really big or really small, then you definitely have a problem with your units. Make sure you set those units, otherwise the game won't work right. So at this point, we can do a save all. We'll hit save a few times. We'll save all, and we'll cook content for Windows. In the bottom right corner, you'll see a little pop-up telling you what it's doing. You'll also hear a little beep. So we can go to our Unreal Project folder. We'll go into Demo Hat, and you'll have a folder called Saved, and in there you'll have a new folder called Cooked. We'll let this finish, just finished, so we can go into Cooked, go into your project, content. So when you cook your project, everything that's part of the tree structure, all the files, they all get cooked. And that's important for when you're using custom meshes and custom materials and textures, because you'll need to include those as well. So like, for instance, if I had custom material and texture for this hat, I would have a materials and the textures folder, and I would take all of it and send it to a compressed zip. But for our example right now, we're just changing the mesh. We're not changing any materials. We're just using the default stuff that's already in the game. So we'll go ahead and compress. We'll rename it Demo Hat. And we'll go over to our session, Mod Manager. We'll add it in to our local texture replacer. Hit Replace. And if you do have issues where you're re-importing this multiple times, trying to fix some things or troubleshoot, always make sure you go in and remove an older version. That way you know what you're putting in is a clean install and that your files aren't overwriting each other or breaking each other. So at this point, we should be able to load up a map, start the game, and if all is good, everything should load up. We'll get the new mesh. We'll use all the default textures. We'll get off the board here, and there we go. There's our mesh, using the game hat, using the game face. I'll go to the apartment, show off the other hats just to prove that it's still using all the other meshes, textures. Yep. And so here's another thing that you need to note when you're changing hats and beanies. Each hat, as you saw in uModel, will have its own specific mesh. So the bald head with the hat is a different mesh than the hat with the hair. Same goes for the beanie. The one with the hair is separate for the one that's bald. So if you're trying to create this look or whatever you're trying to do with your hat, you need to make sure you make two specific FBXs. One that has the hat with no hair, and then one that's doing the same model but with the hat with hair. And you'll need to make sure that all the weighting is right still and that nothing's clipping, because the hair may need to be modded to move out of the way, just because it probably won't fit with this standard hair, so you'll have to move some geometry around. So yeah, that covers it. Everything should be good. I have a custom texture on here, so that also shows that whatever you're using in terms of custom textures from other creators, they'll use the same as part of the mesh. Everything should be good. A good example of that is, I don't have it installed right now, but there's a few mods I made there's a few mods that I had made for the hoodie. So you'll see that the default, the hood is up, and that's always been like that. But the mod that I made has the hood down, or the hood gone altogether for like a crew neck sweater look. And this will look a little weird with the hood up, but if you use the other skeletal meshes for the hoodie, you can pull this look off without any issues. Same goes for the feet. These are custom shoes. These are custom shoes. You'll see some texture issues. That's just because when I cooked the game files, this specific mesh texture is only replacing whatever this texture was. You won't have like these other colors working properly. And same for the shoes. So like this was the one that I replaced, the Vol A, but you'll see there's Vol white, blue, pink, and you'll see that those colors are changing, and that's not really the look I was going for when I wanted to release this, but it's very possible that you can use them. It's up to you, but this probably isn't the look that every creator was going for. It's whatever the default that they had was. So, with that being said, you should be able to take it from here and go and make your custom meshes, get them into Unreal, cook them, and then finally get them into the game so you can finally release them into the Discord channels, modding Discord channels, or for the asset store. So yeah, guys, good luck. If you have any problems, reach out to us in the Illusory Discord channel. I'll link that in the description if you're not already in there. And then there's also the Session Modding Discord channel. I'll link that as well. And all the files that I use in this game and the links, I'll include those. So you shouldn't have a problem. Good luck, guys.